the wrong tune in the wrong key. Gig nightmares for you and me. Song changed keys and I wasn't ready. Gig nightmares for you and me. Another key change, oh God, oh no. Gig nightmares for you and me.
Okay, Gig Nightmares. Here we are today with a very special guest, Mr. Bob Sawyer. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, Max. Yeah, yourself?
Doing very well. So I believe you are 5 hours ahead of me right now, so very exciting. This is the first, international guest we've had on the podcast. So knowing that you've had, many interesting stories, from your time in Iron Maiden, from your time in Praying Mantis, and knowing that you've told a lot of this in your book, I'd like to hear some of those stories just as a little bit of a preview for anyone who hasn't had the chance to read the book yet.
Yeah, okay then. My first story starts on the Metal for Mothers tour. Now, this was around about February 1980. And Praying Mantis was supporting Iron Maiden on this tour. And we were like living on thin air at the time. We had very amateur management. We had no money behind us whatsoever. And the band were living on the coach with the road crew and the PA crew. And one particular night we played in Edinburgh in Scotland, and we actually came out of the venue at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had to drive from Scotland right down to Yorkshire, which is probably a couple of hundred odd miles in the dark at that time of the night. And we're driving through the darkness, and all of a sudden the coach ground to a halt. It just stopped. And you've got to bear in mind, in those days there were no mobile phones. They hadn't been invented. And the poor guy who was the driver, he had to get out of the coach in the middle of the night. I mean, this was probably about 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that, in the middle of nowhere, in just darkness. And he had to walk and find a telephone kiosk and phone his office, who were probably all asleep. Anyway, he got hold of somebody, and he came back to the coach about an hour later, and he said that help will be on its way. Anyway, we sat on this goddamn coach, freezing, because there was no heat, no engine, no nothing. Mm-hmm. And we were freezing, utterly freezing in the darkness for hours. And eventually, I think it must have been about midday, another coach arrived, and we all jumped on it. And we had to go to a place called Grimsby on the coast in Yorkshire. And, of course, all the crew and the gear and everything arrived late. And when we got to the venue, it was like a church kind of place. And it didn't have a stage as we know it. It had a stepped stage, going up and down in steps.
Sure.
And there's no way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was steps. It was not a flat stage. And, of course, you've got all these Marshall stacks, this back line, and these two drum kits that need a flat surface. And because we didn't get there till about 5 in the afternoon, and the show's supposed to start at 8 o'clock. And, of course, like all the road crew, like almost in tears when they saw this. They can't just get the gear up. I mean, the gear was going on late. Normally they get there at like 1 in the afternoon and start setting up in comfort. But this time we didn't get there till like 5 o'clock. They saw the state of the place, and they knew something had to be done. And they were rushing around like maniacs, getting planks of wood and drills and hammers and stuff. And they successfully built a stage in probably a couple of hours, and threw all the gear up and set it up and sound checked in record time, in time for the gig, just about in time for the gig. Then the next drama occurs. Paul Di'Anno from Maiden did the big Gloria Swanson bit. Oh, I can't go on. My throat's shot to pieces. I just can't sing tonight. After all the shit and drama that the road crew have had getting it all ready. And Steve Harris, Mr. Iron Maiden, turned around and went, right, I'm going to sing. If you're not going to sing, I'm going to sing. And Steve, he knew the words because he wrote all the songs. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't a singer by any means, but he got up and he explained to the audience that Paul was unwell. And he did the... I mean, we played our set. Praying Mantis played our set, and we went down, really well because we were pretty together. And Maiden did their set without Paul and Steve singing, and the crowd appreciated, what had happened, and that Steve had stepped up to the mark and done it, and they got a rousing reception, encores.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, how often does that happen that Steve Harris is doing lead vocals for a show?
1 in a million. 1 in a million. I don't think it's ever happened before or since. Because Paul could be a bit of a diva, well, a lot of a diva, actually. I mean, the poor guy's dead now, but he could be extremely awkward. I mean, he was awkward for the sake of it. He used to dress up like a mod, like the mod scene in the 60s in England. And he wouldn't wear, the customary heavy metal clothes, your black leather jacket and the spandex trousers and all that kind of shit. He would dress up in a Crombie coat, a pork pie hat, stay-pressed trousers and loafers, typical mod clothes. And it used to completely outrage Steve Harris and Rod Smallwood, their manager. I mean, they were trying to make a success of this band, and you've got some fucking character with a big ego going totally against the grain. And he used to do that a lot of times. In fact, that was his downfall, really, because later on the big tour, on Maiden's big tour in the summer, where we were supporting again, Bruce Dickinson was found running about backstage, and everyone's wondering why he's there. And there you go, a few months later, Paul's kicked out and Bruce Dickinson's the lead singer. But Paul was a very amusing character. Him and Clive Burr, the drummer, who's also died, the three of us were like the naughty boys on the school trip. Anything that was silly that could be done, we were up for it. And we used to do things like go shoplifting, nicking things out of shops when we got to a town and we had a few hours to kill before we went on stage. We'd all go around the shops stealing silly little things just to be naughty. And Paul would upset people as much as he could. He really would. And I remember one instance, I think it was a gig in Bristol or somewhere. We were setting up and everything, and Clive had an air gun, an air pistol with, that fired slugs. And he was sitting there, and there was a lot of balloons all blown up in this venue, and I think he shot every one of them out just for the fun of it. And what did Paul do? Oh, yeah, no, Clive found a bicycle. It belonged to a caretaker, like a janitor, yeah? And he found it, and he was riding it round the hall, and everyone decided to get on this bike, and there was about 12 people sitting on this bike, and all the wheels bent and buckled, and the bike was totally right. And he put it back where he found it, and the caretaker went mental and was going to sue the band and everything. And Rod Smallwood, the manager, honest, the guy was fucking outraged at all these silly things. He was a very dour sort of northerner, and he didn't take kindly to any hijinks. He wanted to get the job done and make the band successful. And of course, all the silly little things that we used to do just used to completely enrage him. I'm trying to think what else we did. Oh yeah, what did Paul do? We were in getting changed in a dressing room in Glasgow in Scotland years ago, and it was a students' common room, and they had a TV in there, and they had lights that hung from the ceiling. And after the boys had had a few beers, they began throwing beer mugs at the TV and completely demolished the TV. And then they decided to throw the beer mugs at the lights. And the place got wrecked. The place got absolutely wrecked. And everyone ran away. And when Rod Smallwood heard about it, he just went mental. He went absolutely mental. And we all had to hide from him for about 3 days. It was crazy. It was really silly, you know, just behaving like children in your mid-20s. And another time, we were. This was on the big tour in the summer, Maiden's 6-week tour. We were booked into a hotel up in the north of England, and when we got there, we found it was an old people's home. Now, all these hairy rockers are all piling into this place, and there's all these really old geriatrics, and they're absolutely outraged. And you know, the old people on reception are saying, "You can't stay here, you know, this is outrageous." And our tour managers, you know, we'd been on the road all day. They said, "Look, we've paid for this place up front, and we're going to bloody well stay here." All these old people were just totally outraged, and we just kind of took the place over and scared the shit out of them. It was absolutely crazy. I'm trying to think what else Clive did. Oh, there was one instance in Birmingham. It was Birmingham Odeon, and we got there, and they've got a massive front, you know, outside where they used to advertise what events were on, and they had Ron Maiden in letters 10 foot high. The eye had disappeared, and It looked like there was a guy, Ron Maiden, playing there. And honestly, all the band and the road crew were rolling about on the pavement, sobbing with laughter. But Rod Smallwood was fucking outraged. He had a face like a gargoyle, and he was going to sue everybody, you know, for, you know, because it looked so silly. But the bands and the roadies thought it was absolutely hilarious. Ron Maiden. You know, some guy on his own performing there. Another time, we all pulled into a transport cafe, you know, like a roadhouse type of place.
Sure.
You know, to eat. Yeah, you know, where you pull up to eat, like a diner, like an American diner. And this was late at night. And there was one guy working in there. This one guy took the orders, cooked the food, and took the money. And there was about 20 of us, all the bands and the road crew, and we were just stuffing our faces. We were stealing all the food and throwing it about. And this poor guy was trying to take the money and take control. And we were pelting this guy with sausage rolls and wet tea bags and shit like that. In the end, he had to call the police to get us taken out. Yeah. Oh, let's try to think of some more. I've got the book with me. Public Hall, Grimsby. Hang on. Oh yeah, there was one instance. It was very early on in my time with Maiden. This was in 1977, about January, February, and we were doing a gig in London at some school, some kind of college place, London College of Fashion or something like that. And we'd set up in the students' bar, and there was all these students, and you know, they were real intellectuals, and they weren't into the music at all, not one bit. And we were having equipment hassles all the time, amps breaking down and shit, and we weren't in the best of moods. And there was absolutely zero response from these people, absolutely nothing. And I can remember afterwards going in the toilet to change like we did, and these students, about 3 of them came in and really taking the piss out of me, and you know, going, you know, who do you think you are, you lot, with your fancy pantomime and all that? Because you know, Dennis used to do the blood and the sword in his mouth and all that
Sure.
kind of shit. Did you know about that? In the early days, the singer Dennis used to run a sword through his mouth and have blood capsules, and make it look like he'd cut his mouth open. Anyway, yeah, that's what he used to do. Anyway, I'm in the toilets, and these guys are, you know, ripping me apart. And then Dennis and Vic was the roadie. He was a Maltese guy, a real hard case guy. He used to be a bouncer in a strip joint at one time. And he was our main roadie, and him and Dennis walked in, and Dennis had the sword with him, and he had this guy up against the wall with a sword up his butt. The point of it, it was a rapier, you know, a long, thin sword.
Mm-hmm.
And he had the point of this rapier up this guy's nose. He was pinning this guy to the wall, and these blokes were shitting themselves. You know, they were really sorry that they'd started the trouble. Yeah, what else? Trying to think of some good ones.
I was reading one from when you were playing with Big Ladder Woman opening for Hawkwind, where they had the strobe lights.
Oh yeah, that was like back in my early period. That was in 1970. Yeah, that was Big Ladder Woman. That was one of my early bands, and yeah, we were supporting Hawkwind at a local venue. It was like a youth club kind of place, and they had a balcony and the stage and all that, and we were using Hawkwind's equipment because our equipment was just really weedy amateur stuff, and we were using Hawkwind's gear, and they had a massive strobe light. You know, it looked like a World War II searchlight. It was monstrous. And it was on the balcony, and halfway through our set, they turned it on, and we were just blitzed. We just couldn't be. We just had to stop playing. We thought all the equipment had moved over about 3 feet. The drummer didn't know where the drum kit was. It was fucking hopeless. And Hawkwind used to play like this every night with this thing in their faces. God knows how they did it.
It's amazing.
What else was that? Yeah. Big Ladder Woman again. We played in this pub in North London, and the guy who ran it was an absolute gangster, a really big guy, and he had 2 Alsatian dogs, and these things were like wolves. They were monstrous, and we played there for 4 weeks, you know, one after the other, and every night when we came to get paid, it's, oh, I'm busy, you guys, I'll pay you next week. And after the 4th week, we let it go on for 4 weeks. We went up for the money, and he was a big guy, and I remember him looking down on me and went, no, I'm not going to pay you. You played too loud. I told you about it, but you played too loud, so I'm not going to pay you. So what we did, we put all the gear in the van, and me and the other guy, we wrecked the fucking place. I know this sounds naughty, but we trashed his fucking venue because he went back upstairs and he thought we were going home. And me and the other guys, we just trashed the fucking place. Then we jumped in the van and went. Very naughty, but you know, when people take the piss out of you, you got to fight back. It's not something I make a habit of or I'm particularly proud of, but you know, you got to fight back.
Sure.
Is that enough for you to go on for now, Max?
I'd say that's a lot of good stuff there. So that book, Iron Maiden, Praying Mantis, The Early Days, that can be found on Amazon. Where else can that be found?
Yeah, Amazon, eBay, or from Weimar Publishing. You know, they're the people who actually published the book. But, you know, it's easy to get. It's on Amazon and eBay. You just got to type it in and up it comes. Or even put in Bob Sawyer, Iron Maiden, and it'll all come up.
All right, awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's been a pleasure, Max. I just hope I can amuse some people with those stories.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you again.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, when you publish them, let me know, won't you, so I can have a look.
Of course, of course.
All right then, mate. Well, I better go now. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and keep rocking, yeah?
Thank you. You as well. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Gig Nightmares. Gig Nightmares is an independently produced podcast made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this week's episode, we would appreciate if you left a rating and a review for us. Gig Nightmares.